Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm John Peters. I'm a therapist who's been in practice for 25 years, working with thousands of patients. And in today's video, I'm going to share with you my 4 top recommendations for strategies to deal with dread. Okay, so in today's video, I'm going to talk about 4 strategies to deal with dread, which is a common human experience. None of us enjoy it, but basically, we are dreading something that we anticipate is possibly going to happen, or that we think is likely to happen, or is scheduled at some point in the future. It's upcoming. And we have that anxiety where we get this focus and that inner kind of feeling of dread and the worry about the eventuality of whatever we think might happen. So, dread is common. All of us feel dread in different degrees about different things, but often enough. And sometimes dread can be very miserable, especially when it becomes perseverative dread. And what I mean by that is, we don't just feel some vague dread. Oh, yeah, I'm kind of dreading blah, blah, blah. But that dread kind of lands on us in a heavy way where it starts to loom larger and larger in our mentation, in our consciousness, to the point where it's crowding out other things. And it's really frank worry, frank anxiety that we can't then easily unhook from the thing that we are worried is going to happen. So, this strategy can work with all levels of dread, but I'm basically talking about the most miserable dread here, when that's likely that somebody's going to be motivated to try to do something about it. Right. So strategy number 1 to deal with dread is to see it as chronic stress. It's a type of chronic stress because it's pervading our experience and it's unrelenting. And we may not see the light at the end of the tunnel if it's some sort of vague future worry. And so, because it's chronic stress, then like all types of chronic stress, we need to take breaks, because if we get subsumed into constant, relentless fretting about anything, whether it's dread or another type of chronic stress, then we get worn out by that. And 2, it's subjectively miserable. And number 3, that constant focus often is not constructive. So it's just destructive to our ongoing experience, but it doesn't add anything helpful. So my number 1 strategy for dealing with chronic stress of all types, including dread, is concrete thinking. And I made a video about that. I made 2 videos about that recently. And if you want to go check out the first of those 2, I'll put a link up here. But concrete thinking is a quick, powerful, reliable way to be able to take breaks from dread, right? Strategy number 2. This is also a way to take a break from your dread. And I made a video about this too recently. So our brains partially, or sometimes wholly, temporarily, will unhook from something we're worried about if we schedule a time to worry about it. So if you're dreading something, and you find yourself, frequently falling into that perseverative kind of worry about the thing you're dreading, one way to kind of minimize that overall amount of focus, or to make it not constant, is to just schedule time. Like, oh, I'm dreading blah, blah, blah. And so, okay, well, tonight when I get home from work, I'm going to devote 10 minutes to just sitting and worrying about that issue. For a lot of people, a lot of the time, about a lot of issues, simply doing that and scheduling a time to give yourself the opportunity to devote full mental focus to worrying about it, like later in the day or tomorrow, sometimes that actually helps mitigate the magnitude of the fretting. Worth a try, no side effects, low cost. So that's strategy number 2. All right. And then strategy number 3 is that when we get more and more stressed about any particular type of thing, and this includes things that we're dreading, eventually that lands on us in such a powerful way that it starts to occlude other types of perceptions. And one type of perception, whether we're conscious of it or whether it's just implicit, that's very important for us, is a sense of ourself as a whole self, made up both of our challenging parts, sometimes called our shadow, but also our golden parts, our strengths. And as stress goes up, it occludes the sense of the self that can be in touch with our golden parts, right? And why does this matter? Because A, we don't want to fly along too long with a negative self appraisal, but B, whatever the thing is we're dreading, there probably is on the instrumental level, on the practical level, stuff that we might need to do about it. And we might need to exercise our strengths in order to be able to actually cope with it effectively, therefore, not dread it so much because we know we can cope with it, right? So let's say I'm dreading, oh my God, I might lose my job. I might lose my job. What I'm going to do is see that as a bigger and bigger part of my mental pie, to the exclusion of, you know what? I have the capacity to write a resume, or I have a resume, or I can easily update my resume. I can look on job boards for a job. I have the capacity to contact people to put in an application. If I put in applications and I get interviews, I'm capable of showing up at the interviews. So there are these personal capacities and strengths that we have that relate to the particular thing that we're worried about happening and that we think we might not be able to cope well with, but we need to be in touch with those strengths in order to soften the magnitude of the crisis. And those strengths are going to get occluded just simply because of the way our brain works when our stress level is higher. So on the practical level, what does this mean in terms of implementing this strategy? It means literally sitting down and just reminding yourself, hey, I have strengths. I have specific strengths that relate to how I might need to deal with this situation. And those are A, B, C. I have the capacity to do this. I have the capacity to do that. And I'm not talking about hero level strengths necessarily. So don't discount it and say, well, I really don't have any strengths. We all have the capacity to act in accordance with the ways that we should attempt to cope with different situations. One thing in each of our lives will kill us and we'll survive all the preceding events, which means in all those preceding events, we will bring our strengths to bear on trying to cope with them. So we have relevant strengths, and I would recommend just catalog those as it relates to the situation that you're dreading. And the last strategy I'm going to throw out is that when we dread something, often the biggest stress misery subjectively lands on us when we think about the thing in vague terms. So if I think, oh my God, I might lose my job, I'm referring to a specific type of event, but I might lose my job is kind of a vague reference to why is that challenging? Because losing a job isn't always challenging. Sometimes you lose a job that you hate and you're relieved. Or maybe somebody retires and they're really looking forward to retirement, and then they're in a better situation after retirement, so because they don't have to work maybe. So I'm going to lose my job doesn't mean the same thing to everybody in all moments. So when you have this dread and it's about, oh my God, I might get fired, it's really relating to the consequences, the specific consequences of that event. And it also leaves out the specific actions, like I mentioned in the last step, the specific things that you might then do on the concrete level to cope with the situation. So I might lose my job is a vague way of getting stuck in, fretful mentation. But if that pops up and then I say, okay, if I lose my job, I'll look for another job. If I lose my job, I will update my resume and look for places that I can apply to. If I lose my job, I'll take stock of how long I can last on my savings before I run out of money. So there are specific things that we can add to the story that are neutral and or positive that then dial us down from that vague, oh my God, I might lose my job, into, yeah, that sucks. I don't want it to happen. And if it happens, here's what I'm going to do. Here are my options, right? So get specific is the way to understand that recommendation. So those are my top 4 recommendations about how to deal with dread. And I would add a 5th one too, which is with any life issue. If you're overwhelmed, you're feeling miserable, and you think you could benefit from professional support, reach out to a therapist, because that's the type of stuff we do for people. So find somebody you can work with to give you some extra support to cope with your challenging situation. So if you like this kind of content, feel free to hit the like button below, and feel very free to leave comments, because comments are good feedback for me to understand how my videos are landing on people. And and can give me good information about how to craft future video topics. And if you like the channel, feel free to subscribe, and I will see you in an upcoming video.